Hello, everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Sorry, just thing behind the scenes. Hi, everybody. Hope you are doing well. Why did it do that? Hi, everyone. Hope you are doing well. I am your friendly neighbor, Prax. Welcome to the channel. Tonight is Saturday night, and we have started doing book club on Saturday nights. And I am looking forward to it. Talking about books that I read this week and all of the fun, wonderful times I got to enjoy um, and experience. And welcome to Christmas Eve Eve. As you can see, I decided to be festive for the season. We have a nice festive overlay. But yeah. Things are great. How about you out there in the interwebs? Telling me all about the great world in which. For those of you who don't know, I just got a message from one of my friends who is defending Dominic the Donkey. And if you don't know what Dominic the Donkey is, A, you're not Italian, and B, you have not experienced Christmas. These are both true statements. Krillin, hi, how are you? Dominic the Donkey. Side note, hi, we're here to talk about books, but first we're going to talk about a Christmas uh, event, a Christmas experience that is Dominic the Donkey. Um, and I would like you all to know that one of the people I know is adamantly defending Dominic the Donkey. Um, and if you don't know what that is, I don't know that I can play it for you, but I might be able to put the link in the chat. I can put the link in the chat, I think. I will do that because it is a thing that is Lou Monte, God bless him. It's an experience, it's Lou Monte, and therefore an experience. And while I appreciate the fact that Dominic is necessary, it does not necessarily make that song good. I would like everybody to understand. Welcome in. So let's start with that, Coldrake. Why don't we pick up with that? So that seems like a good place to start. Hi everyone, welcome in. I'm your friendly neighbor Prax. This is the channel. Saturday night we're doing book club, and we're gonna talk a little bit about the books. Why don't we start with books that we talked about last week, which is great. Coldrake says, on another note, read books 2 and 3 of the Praveen series and finished The Stardust Thief and sat there thinking, why you end where there be a book 2. So, Coldrake, book 2 for Stardust Thief, I think is coming out at the beginning or middle of next year. It's coming out soon. It's already been announced. She's already announced it. The Ashfire King. Yeah, the Ashfire King is coming out. I guess it's just saying it's coming 2024. Um, And Ashfire King, by the way, is the sequel to The Stardust Thief that we talked about last week, that we read last week. Stardust Thief being a 1001 Arabian Nights inspired fantasy novel that's just so good. And as Coldrake says, I got invested in those characters and I want to know more. And I love Aisha and Mazen, less Mazen, but more Omar and Kadir and Layla. All of these are characters that I need to know more about. Please just give me book 2. I cannot wait for Ashfire King. I guess I should show you. They posted she posted the cover art. Yes. If you do not love Aisha, you need to just run away. Like, this is an this is an Aisha safe zone. And Aisha is here to be protected at all costs. Nothing bad can happen to Aisha anymore. And we need to sit Mazen and Layla down and have like a talk about like healthy communication and why they are doing the thing that they are doing. But oh my god, Kadir. Like, can we just have more of Kadir and Aisha shit talking Mazen and Layla? I want all of that. That's what I want. I want all of that. I want Mazen. I want Kadir and Aisha bonding over shit talking Mazen and Layla. That's what I want. That's what I want. Please, can I know? Here, Krellin, we are glad that you are here, even if you usually are hunting heresy. I have a very important question, Krellin. Are you usually hunting heresy in the space or on the on a singular planet in the fantasy realm? Because it's a very important distinction for those of you who don't know. That means Warhammer. Space. Warhammer 40k. I just need clarification. But Krellin, we are talking about a book we actually read for last week, which is The Stardust Thief by Chelsea Abdullah. Absolutely wonderful book. I love it. Absolutely love it. And it did a brilliant job of, as Krellin is talking about, they shift character POV. The 3 characters that they have POV for in Stardust Thief are Aisha, Layla, and Mazen. And Aisha is to be protected at all costs. She did nothing wrong in her life ever. But yes. And Mazen is a sweet cinnamon roll who does not actually understand how life works. When the nerdy prince gets into the world, that is Mazen. He is... Oh yes, Coldrake. Sorry, Krellin. What Coldrake is talking about, not Krellin. It's both and they are both correct. They are on my chat. I am watching them on chat, and both Krellin and Coldrake are K names that are in purple. Sorry. But the book Stardust Thief, which, give me 2 seconds and I will grab 2 seconds. Just 2 seconds. Yeah, so this is Stardust Thief, and you can see I actually tabbed this book because it is so much fun, and like I love how well they set things up in this book. Again, we talked about this book. I read this book last week, and we talked about this book last week, but I'll talk about it again because I loved it. And I cannot wait for the sequel, which is Fire King, and it's coming in 2024. They set it up so well, and I just need more of Kadir and Omar. I love the fact that Omar is the older prince, by the way. He's the crown prince, and he's a major part of this book, even though he is never a point of view character. Like, this is a book where one of the most important characters of the book is never a point of view character, and I appreciate that so much. And I kind of want to know what's going to happen in Fire King that's going to make this. Omar is not Snidely Whiplash. Snidely Whiplash is ineffective and horrible. Omar is so much smarter than that. Also, I can't wait to figure out, like, so many questions. There are so many questions about this book. Like, I have made this a rule for this book club meeting thing that I will not give spoilers for anything beyond the first 100 pages. I will not give spoilers for the first 100, beyond the first 100 pages, and usually that will even be shortened if the book is shorter, but for, like, this book is, what, like, 469 pages, right? In the first 100 pages, I can mention stuff like you may have only first come across a particular point of view character for the first time. Like, I think Aisha's first point of view... Yeah, Aisha's first point of view is in, like, is on page 57, right? It starts on page 56. So, you know, that experience of having them being like, oh, Aisha is a point of view character. That's great. Yes, no one gets tied to the train tracks. Exactly. Omar does a lot of other things. Omar is not a good person. Omar is not a good person, but he is such a well-written character that you get so much information about from so many different viewpoints, but never his own. And I'm like, I need more. I need to know what Omar is actually thinking, because we know what Mazen, who is the younger brother, thinks of his older brother, who's the crown prince. We know what Aisha, who is one of the 40 thieves, who serves an assassin, by the way. Sorry. I don't have a spoiler tag, but she is an assassin and one of the quote-unquote 40 thieves in this book who serves Omar. We know what she thinks of Omar. We know what Layla thinks of Omar after meeting Omar. And we definitely know what Kadir thinks of Omar. Kadir is not subtle about what he thinks about Omar. Kadir being a djinn who helps Layla and is sworn to protect her. But, like, you don't know what Omar thinks. You know what everybody thinks about Omar, but you don't know what Omar thinks. And I'm like, I need to know what Omar is actually thinking. Please, 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 please. Chelsea Abdullah, can you even if it's just like a side story, Chelsea Abdullah, if you hear this, you probably won't, but that's okay. If you ever get this, can I get Omar's POV? Like, I just need to know what Omar's POV is. Kadir, you are right, Coldrake. Kadir is not subtle about his opinion about most humans. Yes. Yes, exactly. Coldrake says this book could also be considered a puzzle. Pieces are given by each character. The parchment stories are breadcrumbs, and then it gets woven together until life. Like, I'm not spoiling anything further, but there are great points in this book, which I absolutely love, where the author has placed in universe. I'll just show you the first one that's, like, right inside, like, the literal first one. It's the introduction. Like, these are the stories, and they're, like, little parchment stories that kind of come in throughout the book, and interweave so well with all of these other little point of view character puzzle pieces, and you're like, I can get, like, it is so well done. It is so well done. Like, she leads you to the point where you understand the secret, which I'm not going to talk about because it would be a major spoiler. But like the thing, and if you go back and you look at all of the individual pieces, you're like, "Oh my god, you would have understood it beforehand if you could have understood it beforehand." And it's like, that is how well written this book is. All of the little pennies that are, all of the little like breadcrumbs that are leading you to the trail. And you can go back and see where those breadcrumbs come, and it's so interwoven so perfectly. But yes, I need Omar's POV. Please and thank you. Can I have Omar's POV? Life according to Omar. But this is not the books that we read this week. This is the book that we read for last week. That's okay. I'm glad that you enjoyed it, Coldrake. I think more people should enjoy it. I think it was really, really, really well done. Don't worry. I understand that I read quickly and that not everyone is like me and can read 3 or 4 books a week. I understand. But we're actually talking about the books I read this week that we are talking about. And we're going to keep the same rules about spoilers. I will only keep to spoilers, the beginning introduction of the book. That won't actually impact how you experience the story, while encouraging you to go and read these books if you think that this is a book that you would enjoy. And I think we should start with the 3 books I read for this week were The Bone Ships by R.J. Barker, Ancillary Sword by Anne Leckie, and Grief of the Stones by Catherine Addison. And I think we should start with Bone Ships, because Bone Ships is the book that is the beginning. It is the one that is not a sequel. And so I think that we can do a lot of talking about and not put major spoiler alerts up, although we will. Warning, spoiler alert, starting now for this entire book. So The Bone Ships, R.J. Barker. Yes. TLDR. Yes. This is the second book I've read by this author. The first book was Gods of the Weirdwood, which came out this year and is the first book in a new trilogy. This is the first book in his second trilogy. I haven't read the first trilogy yet, but this is the first book in the second trilogy. All of them are different settings and different worlds, which I really, really appreciate. And between this and Gods of the Weirdwood, which is, hold on, I should go grab that. 30 seconds. Okay, so Gods of the Weirdwood, which is this big chonker, 623 pages that I read in 5 hours. I literally could not put it down. Yes, I would firmly recommend reading this book, but you don't have to, because it's not even connected to this book. Like, this is an entirely different trilogy set in an entirely different world, different series. Bone Ships is his second series. What is the actual first series? Hold on a sec. I know that I saw this the other. It's something Assassins. R.J. Barker. To enter. Wounded Kingdom. So the Wounded Kingdom trilogy is this one, which is his first trilogy. Age of Assassins, Blood of Assassins, and King of Assassins, which I have not read yet. I want to get to. I want to finish the Bone Ships first. I'm going to finish Bone Ships trilogy first, which is Children's of the Tide. Tide Child. Which is Bone Ships, Call of the Bone Ships, and Bone Ships Wake. By the way, can we just appreciate the fact that the entire trilogy of this book in my hand, right, this one right here, Bone Ships, is titled after the name of the ship. Not any of the characters, not the, you know, not the point of view characters, not the quote-unquote heroes of this book. The ship. The name of the ship is the title of the trilogy and the focal point. And when you read this book, you will realize that the ship is as much as a character as anyone else in this world. And he did the same thing with Gods of the Weirdwood, where the wood is literally like a character. I have to say I'm really enjoying R.J. Barker's writing style. I was talking with Pope and I made the reference that he is that he writes Grimm's fairy tale style fantasy. Not grim dark fantasy, which is like an entirely different subgenre of fantasy and is okay, I can take it or leave it depending on who the author is and what they're trying to do. But a Grimm's fairy tale style of fantasy where it's atmospheric, it's well written, you can feel the world breathing through the book. This book, and I have a bookmark in early because of reasons, because I'm reading it for the second time, because yes. This book does not introduce a character name until page 8. You are dealing with an atmospheric, well-written journey of a book, but the characters are not named until page 8. And it's not like these are like short pages, right? Like these are long pages. It's an oversized paperback. It is so well written and atmospheric that I can pick this book up and turn to here it is. One of like, also love the fact that he puts in the like sea shanties for this world. There is at the back of this book, where is it? It's here. I found it before. It is okay. In the back of the books, there is an appendix with terminology explained. My man understood the assignment and went for it. Like, you can get so much feelings and emotions and appreciation for this. No, Coldrake. It is not like Daughter of the Moon Goddess, which was like a script treatment. This is literally like, I keep going back to this one paragraph, okay? I've read this book. There are multiple other like, I'm not going to point out other places in this book that I have read that I feel that have the same emotion, because they would be later in the book, and like I said, I'm only looking at sections in the first 100 pages or so of the book. But this one paragraph sums up how, or two paragraphs, I'll read two paragraphs really, how this book is written and how this book feels. So, but in the restless night, his sleep had been troubled by thoughts of his father and thoughts of another life. Not a better one, not an easier one, but a sober one without shame. One in which he did not feel the pull of the sea hag's slimy hands trying to drag him down to his end. One of long days at the wing of a fluke boat, singing of the sea and pulling on the ropes as his father glowed with pride at how well his little fisher boy worked the winds. Of long days before his father's strong and powerful body was broken as easily as a thin varsik vine, ground to meet between the sides of his boat and the pitiless hull of the bone ship. His hand reaching up from black water, a bearded face, mouth open as if to call to his boy in his final agonizing second. Such strength, and it had meant nothing. So maybe he had, for once, woken with the idea of how wonderful it would be to have a little pride. And if there had been a day for him to give up the two-tailed hat of shipwife, then it was not this day. Like, you get character motivation, description, that very, very dark depiction of his father's death and backstory, how this character feels about things, and you're like, you have not gotten a name for the character yet. That is page 5. You still won't get a character name, and not this character's name, until page 8. That character won't get named until page 9. But do you really need the character's name? No, because you have so much about who that character is, and the way in which they are tied to the world, and living in the world, and breathing the world, and you can feel like the creak of the ships and the salt spray, and looking out and going, this is an Age of Sail novel, in a world in which you sail by the ship, bone ships are literally, spoiler alert for page 10, spoiler alert, the hull of the ship is made out of the ribcage of dead dragons. And they, instead of having what we, in our Age of Sail, measured the size of the ship by the number of masts, like a 3-mast or a 4-mast, right? Or even like a 6-master. No. These are measured by the number of ribs, like a 4-rib or a 6-rib. And you're like, damn, that tells me a whole lot about this world. And I don't even need to, like, literally just a throwaway line about the size of the ship being a 4-rib or a 6-rib. I know how the world is measured and can picture, like, the size and scope of a ship measured in the number of ribs of a side of a dragon to make these ships. And you're like, yes, please. I am so looking forward to reading the next book in the trilogy, or the rest of the trilogy, but the next book in the trilogy is Call of the Bone Ships, and then the third book is The Bone Ship's Wake. And I am here for it. I am also here for the fact that this author so far. The two books that I have read by this author have been so unique in fantasy writing recently. Like, I read a lot of fantasy, right? Like, I read a lot. And I read a lot of fantasy because I enjoy it. I also read a lot of science fiction because I enjoy it. But this author has taken... Rewind. I... Like, those of you who know me, hi, I'm Prax. Hi. You know me, I'm Prax. My dad served in the Coast Guard for 27 years, and I grew up in a military family and be naval, like naval in the terms of like oceanic, not navy naval term world. And we would go to Mystic Seaport in Mystic, Connecticut. We would go to various other like New England seaports. I can just picture this crew and this world and how much the sea is like, where in Gods of the Weirdwood, the wood, like the environment of the wood becomes a character. In Bone Ships, both the ship, which is called the Tide Child, and the sea itself become characters in this world. And you're just like, I need more of this. You can go out and like, you pick this book up and you feel like you are it. Any one of 100 seaports on the east coast of the United States, or in Europe, or in the Mediterranean, or in Asia. Any one of a million places where there's an actual seaport, where it's a functioning seaport, and you've got people who are not just on a cruise ship, but like mariners and navy men and fishermen, and this world breathes the sea. And the sea in this world is, to quote Homer, that wine dark, unknowable sea. And just, there's that, this, like, I'm firmly, one of these things the book made me think of is, which I'm pretty sure the author is also kind of quasi-referencing, the line that you see on old maps, right? Here there be dragons. This book is, here there be dragons, have the ocean be a dark, unknowable mistress who can fuck your life up so hard, in so many ways, and have a dragon be the ship. Or at least the bones of a dragon. And you're like, yes, please. Yeah, so Coldrake, yeah, exactly. It's like the drum and bugle. Coldrake says, once upon a time, our drum and bugle corps played music for launching of a new ship. We got shipwright certificates. Yeah, but it's... I'm really looking forward to go reading the rest of this trilogy. And I probably... So my plan is, spoiler alert, TLDR, go read this book. Enjoy this book. Go read Gods of the Weirdwood. Enjoy that book. We'll come back and we'll talk about, if you come back and have any questions, or if you post comments in the YouTube. Hi, YouTube, I see you over there. And if you don't know, on the very first episode of this book club, Jennifer Penner commented, and go read her book, by the way. Jennifer Penner, being the author of A Fellowship of Bakers and Magic, was an entirely different kind of genre, and not this genre, but she was a fabulous person. Go read her book. But I'm going to read, I I'm not making any promises to read between now and New Year's because, hi, I'm from a Sicilian and Irish family. There will be multiple Christmases, and there will be at least 12 people, 12 to 14 and 13 people per Christmas, and then there will be more of these. Hawkeye, I would go. Hawkeye asks, how soon will you until you develop an RPG saga based on these? Look, I would run Witcher in the bone ship. Like, I would take Witcher. You could run Witcher for bone ships. I would do it, and it would have the right feel. And you would just be like, fuck yes. Hi, Cody Pondsmith. Write me an RPG about go talk to RJ Barker. I swear I can talk. I swear. Cody Pondsmith. This is my recommendation. Go talk to RJ Barker when you're done with your current secret project. Go talk to RJ Barker and get me a Witcher, adapt Witcher to this. This would be dope. Hey PB. Welcome in. And so Coldrake recommends Bone Ships Married to Spelljammer. I would say, here's why I'm recommending Witcher instead of Spelljammer. Spelljammer is still D&D, where there's a lot of magic. It's a lot of very, very magic heavy. The magic in this book, it's a fantasy novel, right? Like, dude, you're making ships out of dragon ribs. Rib cages. But it's a low magic fantasy setting, which is what I think why I think the Witcher magic system would be 10 times work really well. And go for it. NPB says, don't tempt her with a good time. Yes. Yeah, don't tempt me with a good time. I've already got plans for things that will be happening in the near future, that will be announced in the near future. But read this book, read this whole, like, I can't promise the whole trilogy. So having finished this, I'm not promising to read anything between now and New Year's. But I definitely want to pick up Bone Ships, Call of the Bone Ships, which is book 2. And book 2, probably read that after New Year's. But I'm definitely going to be reading the rest of this series. I will be talking about the rest of the series. I think this is a great series. 10 out of 10, firmly recommend. But ignore the blurbs on these books. Right? Like, Drake, you think I don't have an entire storage container of books already? You do not understand my reading, or level of reading, and appreciation. So, both Bone Ships and Gods of the Weird Wood suffer from the fact that their blurbs on their back, like the synopsis blurb, not like the, go read this book because, Tasha Suri read it, or Peter McLean read it, or John Gwynn read it. Honestly, there's some interesting names who are listed on here. Like, I'm not talking about those blurbs. I'm talking about, like, the actual synopsis, which, by the way, is 2 paragraphs for this book. The synopsis for this book is, for generations, the fleets of the 100 Isles have built their ships from the bones of ancient dragons to fight an endless war. The dragons disappeared, but the battles for supremacy persisted. Now, the first dragon in centuries has been spotted in far-off waters, and both sides see a chance to shift the balance of power in their favor. Because whoever catches it will win not only glory, but the war. And I'm like, technically true. Those things happen, but that's not really the plot of the book. It's the same thing with Gods of the Weirdwood, which was released this year in 2023, and its sequel is coming in 2024. Has he announced the sequel title yet? Have we announced the sequel title yet? Not yet. He hasn't even. Oh, he has a blog. Which hasn't been updated since 2020. That tells you a lot. Yeah, like this Gods of the Weirdwood isn't even listed on his author book. But so the blurb for Gods of the Weirdwood. Kahan is known as the Forester, a man capable of navigating the dangerous forests of Krua like no one else. But once he was more. Once he was a warrior. Eugenie serves the goddess of the lost, a keeper of the small and helpless. When Eugenie needs to venture into the Weirdwood to find a missing child, she asks Kahan to be her guide. But in a world where land is won and lost for uncaring gods, where the forest is full of monsters, Kahan will need to choose between his past life and the one he leads now, and his choice will have consequences for his entire world. Like, yes, that happens in this book, but that is not the plot of this book. Like, no spoilers, but Gods of the Weirdwood is so much more than these blurbs are giving out. And I think it's, yes, same publisher for both of these books. Both of these books are published by Orbit. In the Orbit's a Tor imprint, I think. Orbit Books. Whose imprint are you? The Orbit UK is the science fiction and fantasy imprint of Little Brown Book Group, which is a UK publisher. So they're very big in publishing sci-fi and fantasy, and they've gotten a lot of really interesting authors on their radar recently. Orbit is really kind of becoming bigger and bigger in the sci-fi fantasy realm. But yeah, that's... Somebody needs to actually sit and read these books to write these blurbs. But, TLDR. Yes, 100 times yes. Atmospheric, well-written, beautiful, complex characters. Complex expressions of strength across genders in a variety of formats. Redemption arcs that are actually redemption arcs. And also a world in which the environment is its own character. And I love that so much. Just so much of this needs to be appreciated for that reason. I think a lot of people really enjoy this book. But don't just trust the blurb on the synopsis on the back. But yeah, that is my opinion about Bone Ships. So my question is, did anybody read this besides me this week? Because if not, I'll stop talking now. And gushing about a book that I absolutely loved. So Coldrake asks a serious question. When you got into the book, did the deck sway for you? Could you hear the rigging creak when the winds blew? So this is where I get a little bit interesting and descriptive. I don't think in images. I think in words. Like, my entire function of my brain is in words and not imagery. Hey Jim, welcome in. I have another book recommendation for you. You, Jim, go read this book. Go read this one. R.J. Barker's The Bone Ships. You will enjoy. And then I want your opinions. But going back to Coldrake's question about the rigging creek and the wind's blue, yes, but I don't think in imagery. I think in words, like literal words. And because of that, I experience and know this world, and all of these words that are describing it, like I can experience it and be like, yes, this is a New England sailing vessel on the high seas. You can picture, for other people, you can picture this ship that is both at sea, at once at sea and at once something else that I'm not going to give a spoiler for because it's kind of important to the fact that they are called bone ships of dragons. This is an ocean world. They can make fisher ships out of wood, but they also make ships out of dragons for a reason. And when you, like, look, spoiler warning for the appendix, okay? Spoiler warning for the appendix. When I sit here and say, the Bone Master in charge of the upkeep of the ship's hull and spines. The Hag's Hand, right? The ship's surgeon who works in the Hag Bower. Few who go under the knife of the Hag's Hand survive. This is referencing and in showing you the in-world connection to what we knew as literal butchers or the ship doctors. The Hag's Bower, like the sea hag is the goddess of this world, but she's called the sea hag. That tells me a lot about this world building without being like this, like, really info dump, lore dump about this world. The fact that the under portion of the ship is called the Hag's Bower, which is under the sea, because it's, oh my god, that tells me so much about this world. Look, you're gonna know it. Wingmaster, in charge of the wings and rigging of a bone ship? Yes. Yeah, yes, I'm sorry. If you didn't figure that out, it's not a spoiler. The Wingwright, specialist crew member who answers to the Wingmaster? Fine. Seakeep, a seasoned deck child with thorough knowledge of a bone ship and how it should be run. The Seakeep is expected to run the ship if there are no officers on deck, and often acts as a go-between the crew should the crew wish to communicate something to the shipwife. Shipwife, master and commander of a ship. The shipwife's word is law aboard their ship. To disobey is punishable by anything up to being sent to a black ship or death, depending on the shipwife's whim. Ship mother, commander of the fleet. There are 5 ship mothers. The ruler of the 100 Isles is the most senior and has 4 deputies. These are named for the North Storm, the East Storm, the South Storm, and the West Storm. Ship mother of the North, ship mother of the East, etc. Like, so much world building is put into this book in such a way that you learn about the world without having characters who should know the answers to these questions look like idiots to give you a lore dump. And I love this. RJ, yes, all of this, yes. So, we will pick that up. I'm going to, look, I'm probably going to, Other doc says, Jim says, damn, I should probably check this out before the next time I run 50 Fathoms. Jim, or A Loss for the Awful Sea. I'm going to tell you right now how much you appreciate Alas for the Awful Sea and 50 Fathoms. You will love how atmospheric this book is, how much both the ship and the sea itself are characters in this book. And, like, where is it? I just want to give you, like, I mean, okay, this is gonna, warning for gore that's kind of glossed over, but warning for gore. And I'm not going to give you an example. This actually includes character names, so you're not actually going to know who is who, but you don't really need to. A scream. Or no, actually, we'll go back a paragraph. The bow teams obeyed while the rest of the crew stood looking lost, like they did not know what to do with themselves, though some at least had the maiden's grace to look ashamed, and certainly Joran was one of them. The big fluke boats had their oars out and were turning their beaks to face Tidechild. A face-on ship was a much smaller target than a side-on one, and the shipwives of these boats knew one hit from a great bow would doom them. Spin, hag take you, shouted Mias. A scream. The cord on the first bow had been over-tightened by the panicked team under Hilan and snapped, the cord whipping back and cutting Hilan almost in two. A wave of blood ran across the deck. Mias ignored the death, ran to the next bow as the loader, staring in horror at the dead man, dropped his bolt and backed away from the great weapon. Ferris, small and damaged Ferris, spattered with her dead friend's blood, stepped in. She lifted the bolt, grunting as she put all of her strength into placing it. Like, yes, read this book. Read this book. Please, please, please. I want to, like, Jim, you'll love this. So, yes. Right? Like, as I've been saying, this is not a quote-unquote grim, dark novel. It is a Grimm's fairy tale, dark setting kind of novel. No, Coldrake, not all of the crew are female. Some are female, some are male presenting. And some are male and some are female, and there are other things. There are he, she's, and theys in this book. And I'm not going to give you any more spoilers than that, because it would be a spoiler for who is doing what. There is a great spectrum of characters. One of the things that so far I have experienced in this author's writing, romance is not even a subplot in these books. Like, romance is not, and I don't know if it's the same for his first series, but romance is not a thing. But there is a full spectrum of gender and presentations in all of his books, and they're just kind of presented in a way that shows that they are part of the world, and how the world accepts that is such a very world. Coldrake. Coldrake says romance has no place on a working ship. No comment. But you can see how much the world in which this author is showcasing gets even more information about the way in which these characters are very presented in a wide spectrum of gender presentations in a way that feels natural and true. In a way that feels earned, right? Like, this is not, we have all read those books that wanted to do a variety of gender presentations and didn't do them well. These books, so far, all of my experience with this author is that he writes those variety of genders in his worlds very, very well, and in a way that feels natural. There are frequent obvious look, this book is about the Black Death ships and a crew that is already basically considered a prison crew and signed off on, spoiler alert, basically considered a write-off, as they're just gonna die for a variety of reasons that may or may not be tied to as like a quote-unquote prison ship, right? It's not really a prison ship. It's more complicated than that. There's lots of world building that goes into it, but a comparison could be made. But this is a world in which there are frequent characters who use frequent in-world slurs for various other people because they are bad characters and you are not supposed to appreciate them. But they are not slurs about somebody's gender presentation. Yep. And again, this is... I haven't... Hold on, I want to make sure I don't quote too far. Okay. Yeah, might have more. Alright, what do they call it? What? He turned to find Mia's at his elbow again. She moved through the ship as if it were part of her already, as if Tidechild conspired to keep her movements secret from him. The Windtalker. What do they call it? Crews always name them, even if the creatures will not name themselves. It has no name, shipwife. They did not name it. They do not like it. Never met a crew that did like them. Skirith's beasts frighten any sensible woman or man, but to control it you must have named it. I have never controlled it. The words made him feel like a fool, and from her expression she thought the same. Never? Why? It will not come, will not help. Will not even speak to me, shipwife. She nodded as if a question had been answered. I thought it unusual a black ship had a Windtalker, but if it will not help, maybe that explains it. Anyway, it will speak to me. She leaned over the rail to shout forward at the fluke boats. Barley, row us out of the bay and call me when we have enough wind to let loose the wings. Like, you get so much world building and depth and character appreciation and Yes, please go read this. That is a TLDR. Now that I have gushed about this book for, excuse me, a solid hour. Yeah, a solid hour. I will be reading the sequels. Call of the Bone Ships and the Bone Ships Wake starting in January. And I think that will be a great, like I'm planning to read them in the first 2 weeks of the new year. They'll definitely be on the early side of this of the list for the book club. So TBR, Call of the Bone Ships and the Bone Ships Wake. Shifting gears from fantasy to science fiction. Science fiction. The other sequel that I read for this week's did a book club was Ancillary Sword by Ann Leckie. And it is the sequel to Ancillary Justice. And has the most... Yeah, don't worry, Coldrake, we do have gears. We're just gonna pop the clutch, it's fine. This is the more interesting, I think, of the covers. It's not like there are other covers that are being used. For example, this is the, you know, the more popular cover, I guess. It's fine. You get the impression of it like an aircraft carrier and like a fighter jet that's coming off of it. I appreciate the kind of like interpretationist portion of this cover. This paperback edition cover. It is very interesting. So the main character in this trilogy is called Breq. B-R-E-Q. Breq. Ann Leckie uses she/her pronouns for Breq, but Breq does not identify as any gender because Breq is a portion of an AI that used to be both the aircraft carrier troop transport massive ship and the individuals that were dead bodies that were given over to the AI so that the AI could run them and have opposable thumbs and do things. And Breq is the only remaining portion of this AI when the ship, happens in the prequel, not in the prequel, but in the first book, which is Ancillary Justice, and is the blurb for the back of the book. Breq is the AI in a singular body that is now separated from the rest of all of the bodies and the ship because it was destroyed. So, like, yeah, exactly. It's an AI like the question about the zombie and body question is you're not 100% sure that the body was dead before the AI is forcibly implanted in these not kidnapped, that's the wrong term. Prisoners of war that are taken by the massive interstellar empire on their expansionist conquering feats. So complicated. Um, yeah, exactly. It's Breck's gender is whatever Breck's gender, I guess, chooses to be. Its current body is female presenting, and Breck defaults to female pronouns whenever they are unsure of the pronouns of the individual that they're talking to, and even sometimes when they do understand that there is a difference between male and female, they default to she her instead of he him, which I really appreciate. It's kind of really interesting, and it really highlights in a lot of the times how English uses the masculine as the definitive, as the default. And Breck and the author Anne Leckie very specifically chooses not to use that in certain cases. And I just so this is a sequel. I read Ancillary Justice, which is the first book in this series in what is it? These books are roughly the same length, so how long are they? They're 350-ish pages. I read them in about a little less than 3 hours. I feel like these books rightfully are very, very, very. I could not put this down. I read this in about 3.5 hours, and then I went back to certain sections and was like, yeah, exactly, 350. It's a short read. It's a really short read, but it's very much a political thriller, and but at the same time a space opera, and at the same time an examination of self and identity and feeling, and does an AI feel responsible, question mark, for the actions or inactions of the rest of the disproportionate members, disparate portions of its AI existence that did other things that may or may not have harmed individuals, and like how does that deal with the question of guilt, maybe, or responsibility, I guess is more accurate. It leads to so many questions about identity and existence and just thought that I really appreciate, and I really felt like we all know that in a trilogy, book 2 is almost always the weakest, because book 1 is going to establish the world and set things up, and you're going to have the end of book 1 be the be the kind of semi climax that it is, but book 2 has got to introduce the more overarching conflict and have itself a compacted story with its own arc and its own climax and conclusion that still does not resolve the overarching issue that will be resolved in book 3. Exactly. Does the queen bee worry over what her drones do to protect the hive and keep the hive thriving? Or more accurately, Coldrake, does the drone, after the entire hive has been destroyed and now is suddenly the queen because she gets promoted and becomes captain of her own ship, how do they deal with the actions of the queen and possibly the rest of the hive? Are they responsible for the actions of the queen or the rest of the hive? It's like very much questioning how things are developing. I really appreciate how it uses one of the things. Oh yeah, exactly, Coldrake. It is literally a jump for this character. And of going from drone, literally a meat suit for the rest of the AI to function off of the ship or with other like actual human officers off of the ship doing things. And I won't spoil book 1, but book 1 is very much about interacting with the politics of the world and discovering certain certain complicated things about the politics of the universe that exists in between this human expansionist empire taking on these colonies and becoming integrating where these former colonies into this massive human empire, and at the same time dealing with the tentative truce with the alien world. There we go. It's complex. Other doc says, oof, right now I'm getting through like 2 to 3 hours of audiobook per week, depending on the length of my walks that week. Eyeball reading time in bed for 15 to 20 minutes before I pass out every night is all being shunted into TTRPGs at the moment. Would that my brain allowed me to relax enough to take more time for such things. Exactly. And Coldrake says, TTRPG world creation takes a lot of brain work. It does. Can confirm. Hi, for those of you who don't know, I'm your friendly neighborhood Prax. In addition to talking about books, apparently, I also run TTRPGs. Yes, I can confirm that lots of my brain power each week is taken up by world building and TTRPG decisions. But I feel that this is also an Orbit publication. And I feel like whoever wrote the synopsis on the back of this book did slightly better than whoever did R.J. Barker's. Breck is a soldier who used to be a warship. Once a weapon of conquest controlling thousands of minds, now she has only a single body and serves the Emperor. With a new ship and a troublesome crew, Breck is ordered to go to the only place in the galaxy she would agree to go. Athoic Station. To protect the family of a lieutenant she once knew. A lieutenant she murdered in cold blood. I feel that that's better, but still not great. Have a Merry Christmas, Hawkeye. Enjoy yourself. Have a Happy New Year. And have a good night. Totally understand. I feel like it's not a wrong interpretation of this book. Kind of leaves some things out, but it's not wrong. So, I feel like this is a great world building book. I don't want to give any spoilers away of this book, but at the same time, I think this is a great depiction, right? Like this is a book where the first person point of view really, really works because Breck is at once both a super all-knowing AI, but also an AI who's been disconnected from the rest of its server farm, and doesn't actually know everything because it's limited by what the physical body it's now inhabiting can perceive. So she doesn't quite understand as much as she used to. Is interesting, but I feel like this kind of sums up, and again, I reinforce my rule, like, not any spoilers within beyond the first 100 pages, nothing that would actually give a spoiler for the book, right? But this gives you a good feel of the author, the writing, the mood of the story. I closed my eyes, felt the corridors and rooms of Mercy of Kalar spotless white. The whole ship smelled comfortingly and familiarly of recycled air and cleaning solvent. And the rooms they were Amat Decade had scrubbed their portion of those corridors and the rooms they were responsible for. Their lieutenant, Syvarden, senior of the Mercy Kalar's lieutenants, was just now finishing her inspection of that work, giving out praise and remonstrance, assignments for tomorrow, and in her antiquely elegant accent. Syvarden had been born for this work, had been born with a face that marked her as a member of one of the highest houses in Radak, distant cousins to Anander Minai herself, wealthy and well-bred. She had been raised with the expectation that she would command. She was in many respects the very image of a Radaki military officer. Speaking with her, Amatz, relaxed and assured, she was nearly the Syvarden I'd known 1,000 years ago, before she'd lost her ship. Before she'd lost her ship, been shoved into an escape pod by one of its ancillaries. The tracker on the pod had been damaged, and she'd drifted for centuries. After she'd been found and thawed and discovered that everyone she had known was dead, even her house no longer existed, and the Radak changed from what she had known, she'd fled Radaki space and spent several years wandering, dissipated and aimless. Not quite willing to die, I suspected, but hoping in the back of her mind to meet with some fatal accident. She'd gained weight since I'd found her, built back some of her lost muscle, looked considerably healthier now, but still somewhat the worse for wear. She'd been 48 when her ship's ancillaries had pushed her into the escape pod. Count that 1,000 frozen years, and she was the second oldest person aboard the Mercy of Kalar. Syvarden, by the way, is male. But Breck refers to everyone using female pronouns, regardless. But Syvarden is male. And Syvarden is the secondary main character in the first book that you find out is literally 1,000 years old, who had been, shoved into an escape pod and when his ship was being destroyed, and just kind of shoved out there and stuck in the middle of nowhere and, frozen for 1,000 years, wakes up and does not handle it well. But in book 2, Syvarden is Breck's second in command. Really has kind of, it's very interesting to have these two be your two be your lead characters. Again, not a romance trope. These are characters who probably are never going to become romantically involved, because Breck is a multi-thousand-year-old ship AI, and I don't think really cares, is probably very much ace and aromantic. And Syvarden, because of complicated things about a variety of reasons, but yeah, 1,000-year-old culture shock. And spoiler for book 1, that isn't really a spoiler because it's kind of like the initial depiction of Syvarden that you don't understand, is that history has a very particular view of who Syvarden is after 1,000 years. Like, because he is male and identifies as male, but Breck doesn't use use anybody's pronouns except for female pronouns. And Breck is the point of view character. But Seivarden is is very, very well known, and history has a very particular viewpoint about what they did 1,000 years ago, whether that's true or not. And you're like, oh, Krellin, I won't spoil that for you. Krellin asks, is he Merryweather or whatever Prime Severance's name is? Comparisons could be made. Comparisons could be made to a lot of people, however, because Seivarden is, interesting. Oh, I think Coldrake is referencing the original Star Trek picked up some 20th century corpuscles and how they tiptoed around the Federation stuff for the ancients. Yeah, Coldrake here is referencing the first time we get to meet one of my favorite characters in the Star Trek universe, Khan! Sorry. Because technically Khan is a 20th century character. Oh, it also happened in TNG, by the way. But yes. So Ancillary Sword is a very good follow-up to Ancillary Justice. And in my opinion, it's not quite as good as Ancillary Justice. And I think Ancillary, but it isn't a bad, like, sometimes there are some really, really bad book twos. But this is not that. This is not quite as good as book 1, but if you're rating it by itself, it's still a really, really great book. I'm really looking forward to book 3. I think that will be another early 2024 read. I think I really want to know what other people think of this series because it's really, really good. Anne Leckie won a Hugo for this series. And what is this? Yeah. So the original copyright on this is 2014. And this is the new print. This is the reprint cover. This is the reprint cover from 2023. But I think it's a really good sequel. I think it does a really good job of introducing more tension in the world between Breck and Seivarden and a bunch of these other characters that are now Breck, who had been alone for decades, and then just had Breck and Seivarden, now has to deal with being the captain on a ship with subordinates who are actual people, as well as ancillaries. And ancillaries are the term used for the meat suits of the AI that are very much non-consenting of this. And then there's the whole, so it's a very interesting look at a lot of issues dealing with bodily autonomy, the powers of the conqueror, expansionist empire, identity, depictions of identity, and gender presentation. Very interesting correlations and connections. So I'm really looking forward to book 3. I definitely recommend, again, please read, please experience, come back, and let me know what you think of this book. Koldrake says, and now it makes me wonder how it would compare to a book like Friday, Robert A. Heinlein's 1982, highlight being an artificial person, artisan, but looking at how an independent AI versus an ancillary. Yes, it would be. I've read Friday, and spoiler alert, I'm not a really big Heinlein fan. I think that Heinlein had some really great ideas. I don't think he was that good of an author. Like, good, brilliant idea, man. Like, actual prose. Yeah, shocker. I'm shocking so many people with all of my great book opinions. You can ask me other great, unpopular book opinions. I have a few. I think it'll be very interesting because not only is Heinlein writing Friday in 1982, and Anne Leckie is writing Ancillary Sword and the Ancillary, the Ancillary series in the 2010s, and the most recent novel in the universe, which isn't really a sequel but part of the whole universe, was released like a couple weeks ago, November. So they have very different viewpoints. They have very different, not only 40 years of technology has changed, but also Anne Leckie is a female author and Heinlein is very much not. And there are very interesting things that come from that, and the way in which Leckie uses that to her advantage and looks at the way, it is intriguing how things work out. Also, yeah, exactly. Koldrake, not many male authors can do great female protagonists. In my experience so far, the best has been David Weber, who writes some very, really, really great female, both protagonists and characters in general. Or at least, the sci-fi genre. I'm sure there are others, but David Weber is the first one who comes to mind. Anne Leckie's Ancillary series and Breck as a character is just so unique an idea that it really is, really is something that I think is unexpected. It so well researched and so well written. Yes, I'd be interested to know people's opinions. If you're watching this on YouTube and have read both Robert Heinlein's Friday and Leckie's Ancillary books, and have an opinion about this, feel free to drop a comment and let me know. But I think that of the two, I prefer the Ancillary series, both just for the interesting world building and the more interesting concept. I like Breck better as a character than Friday. And I think that's irregardless of the technology issues presented, but just the concept of who they are as a character. Now that does run into the problem that Breck is very much defined by the technology that she is both part of and separate from. Like, Breck is an ancillary, right? Like they are the walking, talking corpse of someone who is now, whose identity of whoever they were, the person who the corpse was, is gone, and all that is left is the AI, but that AI is a mere portion of what the AI used to be, And so you're very it's just complex character development. Um yeah. Again, I would love to know if you watch this on YouTube, what your opinions or thoughts about that comparison are. Um and what your thoughts about any of the books that we talk about tonight are. Uh you know, good, bad, or indifferent. Like, that's the thing, is like, I can say what I think of a book series and recommend it for certain authors, or certain, you know, recommend certain authors for certain people, but I can't, you know, not everyone likes the same things, and that's okay. And not every book is for every person, and that's also okay. And as long as it's not actively harming anyone, or you know, the author is not intentionally actively harming people, then you do you and enjoy whatever kind of reading you want. um I kind of want to know. Let me know. Make some comments. Put words in comments. Koldrick says, AI gel with now twice the nanotech. Yeah, yeah, pretty much, pretty much. It's very, yeah. It's a very interestingly dark world, but um, Krellin says the meat puppet thing makes me think of CFD and Shadowrun. Um, a comparison could be made. It has been many years since I ran Shadowrun or played Shadowrun. I played Shadowrun. For those of you who don't know, Shadowrun is a TTRPG. It's a sci fantasy cyberpunk kind of thing. In a fantasy world, kind of. And that's very well known. And Krellin, it's been many, many years since I either played or ran Shadowrun, having done both. That I was thinking it's more of a comparison could be made to, oh, what's her name? What is her name? Okay. Red. Uh, what is her name? What's his? Alt Cunningham. Wow, sorry. I was going through Cyberpunk. Okay, so those of you who I spend more time hanging out, a bigger comparison I think would be made would be to Alt Cunningham. And if you've played Cyberpunk Red, less Cyberpunk 2077, but actual Cyberpunk Red, they've built out the history from Cyberpunk 2020. And in Cyberpunk 2020, one of the characters that you meet is Alt Cunningham, who is Johnny Silverhand's, these are both NPCs, Johnny Silverhand's girlfriend, who is a hacker. And she is subject to the soul killer virus. And yeah, she's the best net runner in Night City during the 2000s and 2010s, and she is unfortunately she is the victim of the soul killer virus. It's a whole thing. She ends up being the soul killer virus, spoiler alert for a plot of a game from the mid 90s. The soul killer virus actually because one of the things when you net run is you send your consciousness into the net, and yeah. Goldrake's like, and here I was always worried about Black Ice, soul killer virus. Yeah. So in Cyberpunk 2020, one of the things that happens is she's a netrunner, and both her physical body and her consciousness, she is using to netrun, which is like sending your consciousness into the world, into the internet to hack things, are captured by possible agents of Militech, theoretically Arasaka. Johnny Silverhand believes it's Arasaka, but not giving you spoilers for who it actually is. It's kind of a big deal and is part of like the Cyberpunk 2020 story. She is then subject to what is known as the soul killer virus, where literally her body is destroyed in an attempt to also kill off her internet consciousness, but she escapes and now exists on the net as kind of an AI, but also a person who, she is an AI, but she was a person and remembers being a person and has all of these things, but she's also being limited and treated like an AI by a number of entities who may or may not want to force her to do things. Comparisons have been made to her being an e-ghost, like Ghost in the Shell, but like trapped in the net. Alt Cunningham is one of the most interesting people and things that Mike Pondsmith has ever created, and I just have like, she's complicated and I love her so much. Oh, she is so great. But yes, if you don't know, follow her. She is great. Exactly. Jim is like, oh yes, I remember reading about that when I was prepping to jump into that one game for a couple sessions. Exactly. Alt is such a unique concept, and remembering, of course, that Alt Cunningham comes out of Cyberpunk 2020, which is Artal. I'm trying to remember when Cyberpunk 2020 was released. Cyberpunk 2020 is 2nd edition. So Cyberpunk 2013's 1st edition was published in 1988. Cyberpunk 2020 is published in 1990. And Alt Cunningham's existence as a, internet ghost, for reasons that are really kind of dark, come into existence in 1990. So, yeah. But I think the bigger comparison than going back to my previous point, Colin said that a comparison between Breck could be made to Meat Puppet in CFD, of a CFD in Shadowrun. I think the better example is is Alt Cunningham, or literally or kind of reverse of Alt Cunningham, because Breck begins as an AI, right? Like Breck's existence as a entity is as an AI. Its physical manifestation and walking around meat suit is taken from someone else on a conquered world, but that person doesn't exist anymore. Male, female doesn't matter. Breck is now an existence that is an AI. And you are correct, Coldrake. Alt does show up in 2077. Not interestingly. Let's put it just that way. Interestingly. But again, TLDR, read the book, appreciate the series. If you like science fiction, if you like space opera, if you like cyberpunk as a genre, I think you'll actually really enjoy this. If you like the kind of complicated questions of reality and personhood. Also very good. Corellin is correct. CFD does start as an AI too. They were AI trying to escape from experimentation and use nanites to overwrite people's brains. Yeah, but Corellin, I do agree that that's how they began. And no, I agree with your entire description of this. Breck is just... Breck had no power to overwrite somebody's brains, like an actual physical human had to do that and force the AI into the meat suit. And then once it's in the meat suit, the question of whether that person was alive or dead is moot. But they no longer exist. And now they are merely... And Breck really only has started to view themselves as a person by the end of book 1, and now is into book 2, is actually viewing themselves as a limited to the human existence rather than a ship. Like, Breck still refers to themselves frequently as, I wish I was still a ship. God, I remember when I had like 50,000 tons of hull space and I could just bombard somebody from orbit. Like, Breck identifies as the ship. And sometimes is very much complains. Like, there's big sections in this book, not really a spoiler, but kind of like a later spoiler that's interesting. There are sections in both this book and book 1 where Breck is like, well, if I was still the ship, I would have like 50,000 more cannons. This little piece of shit that I'm now captaining is so much weaker than I was. Like, Breck is a ship. Breck isn't even an AI. Breck is like, I am the ship. And therefore has some very interesting opinions at times. Yes, Coldrake, exactly. How does this series is like, how does a ship AI that is nebulous and expansive cope with being excuse me. Thank you, excuse me. Nebulous and expansive cope with being squeezed into the meat puppet skull versus a human trapped in their own brains being injected into the cloud. Exactly. Moot question. Imagine being a ship with sensors on the hull that could let you see an X-ray beyond ultraviolet. So exactly, like Breck has some very interesting. It's like, oh, yeah, you know, if I was still a ship and I could talk to the other members of my, being, I could have 50. Like, because that's the other thing is like, and the way this is designed is the concept of ancillaries. They are meat puppet humanoid humans that have been, meat puppet suits that the AI is downloaded in, but each of those AIs are still actively running and thinking of themselves as a single entity, even though they are doing multiple different things. So, like, there's a depiction in book 1 where the AI of Breck is having a conversation with the lieutenant who's in charge of a particular area's occupation force, while simultaneously acting as a, leading religious rituals to another percentage of the population, as in, these are now forced conversion and I am now showing you certain religious rituals, while simultaneously being across the planet and dealing with possible insurgents, and also simultaneously being in orbit and describing what infrared analytical information can be gained from orbit scans of the planet, sending that down to the various meat suits on the world, and like is constantly thinking about themselves as a plural, as the ship, as doing all of these things, and referring to themselves in the first person and doing all of them. And you're just like, yes, please, thank you, I want more. again, 9 out of 10. Book 1 was 10 out of 10. 9 out of 10 for the sequel, or for the second book in the trilogy. Going to read the third book, which is Ancillary Mercy, which is book 3. And that's the book where we're really going to get into the alien empire, like interacting with the aliens, like the non-humanoid beings that exist in this universe. I'm really looking forward to that. And so that's going to be another beginning of 2024 read. So yes, Ancillary Justice, Ancillary Mercy, then I'm going, or Ancillary Sword, and then I'm going to read Ancillary Mercy, which is the conclusion to that trilogy. There are 2 more books that Ann Leckie has since released, is set in the same universe. They are Provenance and Translation State. And but I'll probably read those later in the year to give myself some more time to kind of, deal with the end of this trilogy and see where I'm at. But it is 11 o'clock. I'm going to take a short break so we can stretch, bio, refresh, do all of those things, and I can get some water because I've been talking a lot. And let you all do all of that. And we will be back in like 5-10 minutes. Hold on, I have to make sure everything is okay. Oh, why is it? Okay. But yes, we'll stretch, bio, do all of those wonderful things, and we'll be back in about 5-10 minutes. Take a good break, everybody. everybody, welcome back. You're refreshed, you bioed, you stretched, you did all of those good things, and you are ready to join us again, second half of book club. I am your friendly neighborhood Prax, and we're talking about books tonight. Lots of books that I'm enjoying and have been reading. So, next up, the last book I read for book club this week was Grief of the Stones, which by Catherine Addison. Keep wanting to say Anderson, and I know that is wrong, but it's Addison. Grief of the Stones is the sequel to Witness for the Dead, both of which are a series focusing on an a side character in excuse me 1 minute, I feel my notes. Okay. So, Witness for the Dead and Grief of the Stones, which is the second book in this trilogy, focus on a side character, an important side character, but a side character in her standalone novel, The Goblin Emperor. And I want more people to read The Goblin Emperor to appreciate how wonderful it is. So The Goblin Emperor is just a beautiful, beautiful book. And here, I'll even pull it up on Goodreads because it has the better cover on Goodreads. So this is Goblin Emperor, which is a really big, thick, substantial book. And it's really interesting. I like the appreciation that some people, I would not call it young adult. It is not young adult. It is, whoever called it young adult was, no. It is high fantasy, but it is also steampunk and science fiction fantasy. Those I agree with. There are the goblins and then there are the elves, and they have very different physical characteristics. They are described differently. They're very different, like very, very different, but they can cross. And there's lots of complicated politics involved and whatever. But the main character in the Goblin Emperor is the youngest son, but he is a half goblin. And his mother was a goblin and his father is the emperor. 'Cause, the emperor do what he want. Right? Like, the emperor do what he want. And all of his older brothers and his father are killed in an airship accident, and he is suddenly thrust into being both the emperor and dealing with the fact that it's probably likely that his father and his older brothers were assassinated. So he's got to take on the throne. He has never been expected to be anywhere near the throne, and as a half goblin is kind of seen as a, insert racist commentary here. And it is so intriguing the way this book is so well developed and is both soft and not, and the main character is not a great hero. He's not a great fighter. He's not suddenly going to become massively overwhelming at, powerful at, understanding politics and all of these things. and he has to learn to navigate this court. And one of the characters in that series, in that book, is the person who becomes the main character in this trilogy, who is Tara Chelahar. Thara Chelahar. Thara being his, like, title / family name. It's complicated. Catherine Addison does a very good job of immersing you in a world and not really explaining a lot of the terminology that she's using when she creates these very hierarchical structures and terminologies and various rank-based honorifics that are tied, but she doesn't explain them, right? Like, the characters just use them, and you kind of go with it because this is the immersion of the world. The characters know what they're doing. You're going to get there. So Chelahar, who is the main character in the side trilogy and is an important side character in the Goblin Emperor, he is a priest, is an elf, and he is a priest for the god of the dead, who also has this unique ability where he can touch the dead and literally see their last moments, ask perhaps last questions, all of these kind of things, and speak for the witness for the dead, right? Like, he can literally, and you see examples of this from the main plot of these books, which is he's left the capital in this series, and he's living in one of the outer cities, and he's serving the people by having an office, and anybody who's had a dead relative or somebody they know die can come to him and be like, hey, we have this question because we've got these 2 different wills, and I've got like 4 brothers. Can you come and like touch my dad's ashes and know exactly which of these 2 wills is the correct one? Sure, I can do that. Or, hey, can you touch this dead body of this woman we found in the canal and determine whether it was murder or suicide? Sure. By the way, it's murder. Oh, okay, so are you going to witness for her now that she's, help us find the murderer because you can, talk to people and get information? Sure. We're going to solve mysteries and murder mysteries in this kind of way. And it's really, really riveting. And it's so well done. And it is a first-person perspective from Chelahar's perspective. It's a very interesting first-person perspective. And they're both really short. Like, this is book 1, Witness for the Dead, and then Grief of the Stones. And book 3 is supposed to be coming at the beginning of next year, I think. Or midway through next year, and there's a 3rd book in this that's coming next year. They're short. They're really quick. Well, at least for me, a really quick read. They're like 250 pages. 250 pages for Witness for the Dead, and then Grief of the Stones is 245. So about 250 pages each, and they're nice little short mysteries in a fantasy world that's also kind of steampunk and also kind of interesting because you got a lot of the politics and the religion and the world building kind of just like set there. Also, the main character be hella gay, and it's kind of complicated, and he's got some issues dealing with that because of reasons. Less because of his general sexual identity and much more so because of politics tied to his sexual identity. And his developing connection and friendship with an opera writer. Composer and lyricist. So picture a Victorian era high fantasy world complete with the drama and the quasi scandal that comes from dealing with opera performers, not the opera itself, but the opera singers and writers who are kind of like artistes and bohemians, and hanging out with them, and also at the same time, you know in dealing with the politics of high ranking religious priests of various religions and serving various gods. All of that is in these books, and they're short, but they're so well written. And like, I can't read you the first line of Grief of the Stones because it is literally a spoiler for Witness for the Dead. Okay. So I can't give you that answer because it's a spoiler. Can't give you that answer because it's a spoiler. But he's hanging out with in book one. He meets a bunch of opera people for reasons. And then in book two, he's dealing with a girls' foundling school and some interesting things that are coming out of that. And if you have any appreciation for like Victoriana and Victorian sensibilities and understanding of that and imposing that on a fantasy world and looking at things like steam powered magic airships that exist and wanting, how did they work? We have aeronaut quarters and the factories may or may not explode, things that are happening. Paul Drake, I see you. You also have things like photographers and what they're considered positive or moral or not. Interesting questions. But Grief of the Stones is a great direct sequel to Witness for the Dead. And then book 3 is supposed to be coming out, I guess, in 2024. And it is so well written. And okay, so usually I would not go this far into such a short book. It's 250 pages, and this particular little bit that I'm about to quote from you is on page 88 of this book. But I feel like this kind of sums up the author. And again, I feel like this is very interesting. I'm not usually a big fan of the first-person perspective narrative, but both Catherine Addison and Anne Leckie have such interesting characters. That I appreciate, and they both write first person perspective very, very well. Look. Oh, Jim. So, mini spoiler alert for Witness for the Dead, because it's not really a plot relevant spoiler, but it is relevant to a character's perspective. The character who is the opera composer and lyricist, who is the very bohemian individual that Chelahar meets, is I want to make sure Vanian. What is his name? How do you on our Pelthenhior is mostly is a goblin writing opera, and or at least half goblin. He's a goblin. Writing opera, which is usually considered a like elven kind of thing, and it's a more predominantly elven city. And one of the things that he is doing when Thara Chelahar meets him, Thara meets him, is writing an opera where about the working class, and the main female singer is a goblin. The opera, my man be writing Carmen, okay? My man is writing Carmen. Like, if you have any understanding of opera history or appreciation for opera, yes, I an Italian stereotype. If you have any appreciation or love of opera, this guy is writing and premiering a work comparable to what our version of Carmen in the Victoriana period, in a world in which opera is considered high art and all of the people go to opera to see Wagner style, Mozart or Ring Saga or all of that. And our boy here is writing La Traviata, or more accurately, he's writing Carmen, right? He's writing about the lower class, working class, female woman of color who is put upon by men of power, of a different race. I'm sitting here going, wow, you're writing Carmen. You're writing Carmen and producing it and putting it on play, and you're talking about the world in which that kind of opera is being performed for the first time and how it's affecting people and how it's coming to be. And Thara, who's the main character, right? Like, it is his perspective. It is Thara's perspective. And Paltherion is like, hey, you should come hang out in our box. Hey, we want to have fun. You're going to hang out with me. We're going to talk. And, like, Thara is what everybody expects of a higher class elven individual to be. He is supposed to be, he is elven, he's from a higher privileged family, he's from a very, his cousin is spoiler alert for Goblin Emperor, his cousin is the wife of the emperor who dies. Oh yes, Coldrake. I and Kelly have talked about this book. I may or may not have told Kelly that she needs to read this book, but she needs to read Goblin Emperor first. For those of you who don't know, Kelly is the opera geek, and she and I are friends. She be great people. But so Thara is, by all accounts, this upper class individual, and then you're like, no. Literally his cousin is, his first cousin is literally the current empress when the airship explodes and the emperor and his oldest sons die and the Goblin Emperor comes into power, which is why which is how you meet this character. But he is like, no, he is an actual, not just a person of privilege. So he is looking at a level of true faith and calling, because he literally touches somebody who's a dead body and can find out this kind of information from them. And so he's hanging out, like, he's just this little sweet little being, and now he's hanging out with the courtesans, the gamblers, the opera performers, getting involved in the drama that is, like, the rivalries between the various opera houses and the various prima donnas. And you're like, my man, you're sitting here in this office talking to this lady about how, you're more than happy to touch her dead husband's remains to find the bag of, like, small amount of money that he had hidden for her. Like, it is so, on one hand, wholesome, and then on the other hand, murder. like murder. And religious politics, and world politics, and a character who does not want to actually be part of the overarching politics of the empire, but can't really avoid it because of his position in society. And he's like, you would expect like him hanging out with these opera singers and performers and these bohemian artists to be like quote unquote slumming it, and it's not. He's just, I'm just a priest here treating whoever I can. And you're like, damn it, I love you, you're so wholesome, nothing bad can happen to you. God damn it. So, again, I, usually would kind of consider, because, like, the first would not give, wouldn't give a spoiler beyond the first quarter of a book, and that's kind of been my rule. But this particular bit isn't really a spoiler, because it is... Spoiler, bad things happen to the protagonist. Yes, Krellin. Bad things do happen to the protagonist. In a way that you're like, God damn it, I need to protect. So this sums up both the character and the writing and gives you a taste of the world without giving you a spoiler about the book, right? Like the plot. Yeah, Carlin, sorry, I spoiled every book ever. Yeah, the bad things happen to the protagonist. Exactly. So for example, the Goblin Emperor novel is 446 pages. These aren't quite novellas, but they're 250 pages, right? Like, they're really, really short. They're really, really short for a fantasy novel, but they're probably about on par for, like, a Harlequin romance or, like a dime store fantasy, like, mystery novel. Which is actually a slightly better comparison, because, like, these are just mystery novels that happen to be in a fantasy world and dealing with fantasy stuff. So this is a little scene that I was just like, I was reading it, and because this is so short, I saved this for the end of the week. I read this last night. I literally read this last night, and may have stayed up a little too late reading this, but that's okay. It's a good book. It good book. A good book. But when I read this scene, I both snort laughed and had to get up to get the little tab flags to make sure that I had the correct page for tonight so that I could share this scene with you, because this sums up who this character is, what the writing style for the author is, how the world works, and so many other things without being a spoiler for the plot. Beyond the fact that you're going to meet a character is introduced in this book really, really early in this book to be Thara's apprentice, basically. Another person who has gained the ability to touch dead bodies and learn information about them. And so has been sent to Thara to basically just be like, hi, teach person. And they're there in this scene. And that is literally the biggest spoiler, plot-wise, that you will come to. But, they also use the royal we. It's very interesting. We have been friends with Merem Mulinaran for many years, and she was always the woman who told stories. Lies, our husband called them, but we did not and do not believe that she intended them to be taken seriously. But she stopped and wrestled with it for a moment, then started on what seemed to be a fresh track. Merem Mulinaran died 3 days ago. She had no children and no family in Amalo, and we are distant cousins, for our mothers were both Dekaldase, which is one of the big, powerful families. She appointed us her executrix. She stopped. This time it did not appear that she was going to be able to start again. I said, if you have come to us, you must have a question you need to ask her. Yes, she said. Who is the dead body in her attic? After a moment, I said cautiously, "That seems like a very reasonable question." And I'm not going to read any further, but like, who is the dead body in her attic? That seems like a very reasonable question. Why are you here? Oh, there's a dead body. Okay. I'm more than happy to help with that, I guess. And then, not gonna give you the whole bit, but it gets even better. Because this whole bit with the dead body. You believe she murdered her husband? We do not know. She gripped her hands tightly together, as if afraid of what they might do. That is why we have come to you, Othala, because the only person who knows is Nishiro. All right, I said. It is a rightful petition. Let us go ask Mara Mulinarin about her unexpected lodger. Oh, we need not go anywhere, said Mara Sharon. We brought her with us. And she produced from her bag a squat black box. Mara Mulinarin had been cremated, according to the stipulations of her will, but Marin Bralisharan had not yet scattered her ashes. We found Mara Molinar, if that is who he is. Well, her body was at the crematory. We knew we had to disregard her friend's wishes until the mystery was solved. An awkward fix to be in. Yes, I said. We will know very quickly if Marin Mulinarin has the answer you need. Like, you have a dead body in your attic, and you're like, I need to know about the dead body in the attic. And this lady just died, and I need to know. She had a dead body in her attic. What the hell? I don't know. But she's just died, and she's gonna be cremated. But if I get rid of her ashes, we can't ask her about the dead body in the attic. But if I keep the ashes together, I can take it to the priest, and the priest can tell me about the dead body in the attic. But here, I brought the ashes of my dead cousin. Would you like to touch them and tell me about the dead body in the attic? Hi. Like, this is such a short, like, if they're 250 pages, but so many things happen, and they're all interconnected, and they're all tied together. All of these things put together in such interesting ways, and you're like, yes, I do, you know, like, literally, if you walked... I feel for Thara so much. Thara is such a sweet cinnamon roll, and this lady walks in and is like, "Hi, we need to know about the dead body in an attic." Yeah, I think that's an important question to ask. I'm not gonna give a spoiler to that question, Krellin. I'm not gonna give a spoiler. I'm not gonna answer that spoiler. Because I want everybody to read this book. Like, go read these books. They're 250 pages. They're really, really good. And they're just... Thara is such a sweet, sweet cinnamon roll. And God, you're like, you're a priest who actually believes in what your faith is, and at the same time, like, are put in a situation where you have to deal with the politics of the city and the politics of the various priesthoods in the city while actually trying to serve the underrepresented and the lower... Helen, if everybody wants the answer to that question, I can give you... No, Krellin, you're actually wrong in this case. It is the woman's dead body. Like, it is her ashes. She handed me the box. In it were Marim Mulinaren's ashes and a striking peacock brooch. But I don't want to go any further because I don't want to spoil the answer. I want you to go read the book. But like, Thara has to deal with all of these. Yes, some other time, surely. Exactly. There are like one of the other. It's both a plot point and a world building point that in this world you have to remember the names of the dead, and it's why tombstones are so important, and why like graveyard workers and graveyard keepers are so important is because if the tombstone loses the name and the name of the deceased isn't remembered, they can come back as ghouls. And one of the things that the priests of the dead have to do is put down revenants, ghouls, and zombies. And you're like, by knowing their name and discovering their name, and you're like, names have power and they're really important. And maintaining the graveyards are really important. And protecting all of these graves that are like centuries old is so important. Otherwise, that's how you get zombies. Yeah, exactly. There's a whole process in it begins in Witness of the Dead, but then it carries over into Grave of the Stones, where the world building describes that depending on what sect an individual is tied to, would deal with what funerary rites and rituals they believe they need. And having the wrong funerary rituals can have that person come back as a revenant and eat people. And you're like, well, real important, it's both, it's really interesting because it shows that all of the, it's like all of the rituals are important because they do a thing that is important, but no one particular is specifically the one in which it is ascribed to be the true answer. And I love that. Exactly. It goes back to the Praveen series. And the Indian, depending on cult or sect and how you deal with the bodies. Like, that's the point in Grief of the Stones, in that little scene, right? Like, Merim, which is the married title for someone of no rank. Mulinaran, which is a married woman. The lady is cremated, which is what was left in her will, because that is the sect or her will tied to. But then there are people who are like, it is considered like the truly wealthy are buried at sunset, and if you're like, there's a scene in the book talking earlier and in Witness of the Dead where like 3 older gentlemen who died in the same neighborhood all died within like 2 days of each other, and their heirs pooled together to have their funeral done at sunset because it's so like expensive but also the highest point and most religious, versus other people who have different rites who believe like they have to be buried within 24 hours or they have to be buried. It's like the world in which this is all tied together and the information that you get from this in 250 pages is so interesting. And I can't wait for the 3rd book in this series. Like, I love the world building. I love the characters. I think that Thara is a sweet, sweet cinnamon roll who needs to be protected, and god damn it, the author isn't. And I love all of the side characters we've met so far, and just the interesting world that is put together, and how like you get these little hints of both fantasy and Victoriana and steampunk and sci-fi all just kind of melded so softly together in the right kind of way. And like the thing we left off of at the end of Grief of the Stones, I need the next book. I need the next book so that I can please and thank you just, you know, find the answer to some issues. I'm just saying. So apparently I just was looking on Goodreads because sometimes that happens. So this is the author, Catherine Addison, who is the pen name for Sarah Monette. And writes you know, is writing in this series. So the Goblin Emperor is book 1 of the Goblin Emperor, but there hasn't been anything since, so I don't know if it's actually going to be a series. Who knows? But then the Cemeteries of Malo is the Witness for the Dead and Grief of the Stones. So there's book 1 and book 2 in that series. And then there's Min Zimmerman's Plan and Laura Selza are like, I guess, novellas, because it's 1.5 and 0.5 in that series. And then Tomb of the Dragons is the title for the 3rd book. Does it have a publication date yet? How do you have 1-star reviews? I love this. No release date, no premise, not even a title yet, but have never added a book to my shelf this quickly. Okay, but how do you have a 1-star review? Heck, who is giving you a 1-star review on a book that isn't even out yet? Like, what the heck is wrong with this? These aren't reviews. These are like, I don't. It's a rating. Why are you giving a 1-star rating to a book that isn't out yet, that doesn't even have a premise yet? Like, there's no stats available on this book yet. How do you have a one? I don't understand Goodreads. I don't understand Goodreads. I don't. If the book's not out yet, how can you write a review on it? Or how can you write a rating on it? But that's the thing, is like, no, Coldrake, on Goodreads, to put a review, like a rating on it, you have to physically click it to like put a review, to click a number on it, right? Like you have to physically click it, because like it I don't understand. Like, the book is not out yet. It doesn't exist. There isn't even a blurb for it. So like, why Goodreads? Explain to me how you will let people put ratings on books that aren't out yet. And not just not out yet, because I guess theoretically you could have somebody who had like an e-arc or an ARC copy, which is an advanced reader copy of a book, and they could perhaps be giving ratings for the arcs that they're reading, but the arcs aren't published novels, and I guess aren't the final version. Like, it can go through edits again, and I just projected future reading grumpiness. That's entirely probable. But I don't understand. I literally don't understand how you can have a book not have you know, you don't have any. I feel like this is a case where Goodreads needs to adjust itself. I can't wait. But anyway, I'm looking forward to the next book in that, which will probably take a while, but whatever. It's a book. So, I guess what I'm here to say with my conclusion is all three books I read for book club this week, Grief of the Stones, Ancillary Sword, and The Bone Ships are all very, very good, and I do recommend them. I recommend them for various people. If you like, I think that Ancillary Sword is a really great space opera while also being an exploration of self and identity and self-expression and gender presentation, even in a very interesting way. Also, how you think about how other people think about you. That's a thing that I think is going to be very interesting. If any of you like any of that, definitely go read the Ancillary. First book being the Ancillary Justice, the second book being Ancillary Sword, and the third book is Ancillary Mercy. Bone Ships is just, it's just good. It's an atmospheric, in-depth look at how a world in which dragon skeletons can get turned into ships that both sail and fly high. You were aware that was a thing that was going to happen, right? And the world in which how these characters deal with that, and where you have both the fantasy setting and the explanation of both the ship and the sea being a very important character in this low fantasy world. 10 out of 10, read. And then finally, Catherine Addison's Grief of the Stones, Witness for the Dead duology so far, which I'm really looking forward to the third book. Short mysteries, light read, well, not really light, quick reads, well written, well developed, and a character that I think is one of the best. Like, I just love these characters. I think that's a good explanation at this point. But I'm gonna turn it over to those of you in chat if there are any questions. Does anyone have any thoughts? Any of these books exciting? Or anything that you think that one of these books you're looking forward to? No, you don't have to do a 3-page summary for each book. I'm just, want to know if there's anyone that you are looking forward to. But we're going to end for today. We are going to next time you will see me will be... Yes, I think you will really, really like Bone Ships, Jim. Good luck, Coldrake. Thank you for supporting your local library. Always support your libraries. I support this. You know, I also really enjoy reading library books. I'm reading through the Pavine series in the library. I'm going to be taking a short break for the holiday. So we don't have Carousel Court tomorrow, because it's Christmas Eve. But we will have the penultimate episode of Carousel Court on New Year's Eve. Come hang out with us. We're going to ring in the new year with some fun times with all of the wonderful crew for Carousel Court, diving into 1998. And then we come back. Then we have one more episode after that, which is the finale in the tier 2000. It'll be very interesting to see where things go. I'm not going to make any commitments right now about what I'm going to read for next week. Actually, I think we'll have next Saturday on the 30th, we will have book club, but I'm going to kind of leave it open to just kind of chat about whatever. Mostly because it's Christmas and I might be getting books for Christmas and I don't know, you know, like I'm not making a commitment to read anything until I know what I get. Like I'm getting books. And that might change my schedule, right? Like all of these things. So I'm going to just kind of leave it there. And then we'll be back, but we will be back with Carousel Court on New Year's Eve. And then the week after New Year's, we'll be back on assignment on Wandering DM for the next season of Montreal by Night. And some interesting things are kind of developing on that vampire game I'm looking. Other Doc says, I just finished The Mummy today. And I need to do something a bit more modern now, setting-wise, get a break. But I'll probably be able to get back into pure fantasy stuff after that. I mean, fair. You finished that. That's fair. Yes. Yes, I understand exactly what you mean, Other Doc. You can blame the Ravnos, but Krellin, but it's not our fault. It is not the Ravnos' fault. But again, I'm looking forward to it. I'm also looking forward to all of the fun things that we will get to do together. And there will be an announcement on New Year's Eve about things to come in the new year, because coming up ahead. But are you really a Ravnos if you're getting blamed for, like, look, that's not wrong. You're not wrong. But thank you all for hanging out tonight. If you enjoyed this, you should also check out the YouTube, where all of the old VODs are, including the first 2 episodes of Book Club, where we talked about some wonderful, wonderful books. And I make sure to link all, and this is when it goes back up on YouTube, I make sure to link all of the books that we discussed, and using the author's website if possible, to make sure that everybody knows how to find the books. I will say one other book that I'm really looking forward to reading in the new year is Red Palace by Jane Her. It's this one. Korean drama, murder, mystery, funness. I am looking forward to it. And I think it will, and she won an Edgar Award for this book, and I am really, really looking forward to it. But Depends on, like I said, not going to commit to anything yet for next week because I might get presents. Who knows? But again, if you liked this, you can check out the VODs on YouTube. And if you want to support me, there's a Ko-Fi for that. Helps the channel, helps put money into the channel and the production and all of those kinds of things. And there's also merch. And all those good things help run the channel and help out around here. But we should send some love out into the universe. It's also Iceland that gives away books. Oh, Little Cup of Joe is up. They are playing Pia and we shall raid into them and send them some love and joy and all of those things. And I will catch me on Instagram, Hive, and Blue Sky as Prax the Bard, and Twitter as @Deirdre. And I can't wait to chat with you all next time about more books. Good one, everybody.